Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're opening up a really remarkable stack of source material. And at first glance, it looks like a very specialized guide. Blueprint for achieving C1 mastery in English.
Right, for advanced learners.
Exactly. But as we started meticulously working through these documents, the real mission became, well, pretty obvious. The strategies outlined here are so much larger than just language.
They really are.
They are, in fact, master lessons in how to tackle complexity across the most defining areas of modern adult life.
That's precisely the insight we uncovered. I mean, this material, it basically serves as a meta guide.
A meta guide, I like that.
It takes the advanced critical thinking and the precision you need for near-native fluency, and then it applies that same rigorous method to 3 huge domains.
Okay, so what are they?
Advanced communication, one. Then mapping your entire career trajectory. And finally, navigating the radically shifting dynamics of 21st century relationships.
So if you're a high-level learner, you already get the difference between being just proficient and being truly fluent.
Sure.
Our deep dive today is designed to give you that same crucial distinction, but for life decisions.
Yeah.
We want to extract the most transformative nuggets of knowledge that move you from being good at these things.
To being truly exceptional.
Exactly. Exceptional at mastering the gray areas.
And our synthesis today will cover specific, actionable strategies for language refinement. It will also give a detached comparative analysis of 2 massive career paths, entrepreneurship versus traditional employment.
A huge one.
A huge one. And then we'll delve into the essential new vocabulary and the evolving landscape of contemporary love and social connection. It's really about building a robust navigation system for complex situations.
Okay, so let's begin where the source material does.
Yeah.
With the language itself.
Makes sense.
We're focusing on the strategies you need once you've sort of surpassed that intermediate fluency.
Right.
You can travel, you can debate the weather, you can survive. But there's this crucial plateau that so many high-level learners hit.
Oh, absolutely. The barrier.
The barrier, yes. The barrier between being functional and being nuanced, between clarity and true style.
And that plateau, it's defined by a lack of subtlety. It's the difference between knowing a word and knowing its emotional behavior.
Or his behavior, yeah.
The source material just nails this transition. You have to move beyond dictionary definitions, beyond simple transactional speech.
And move toward what?
Toward communication that incorporates sophisticated context, emotion, and precision.
Okay, so let's unpack this with our first core strategy. It focuses on that crucial area where competence, it often just breaks down. Spontaneity. Hashtag 1.1 refining spontaneous conversation.
So the C1 learner, they've mastered the scripted dialogue, the presentation, the prepared speech.
The predictable stuff.
But real communication is messy. It's unpredictable. And honestly, it's often adversarial.
Like a job interview that throws a deeply philosophical curveball at you.
Exactly that. Or a negotiation where you suddenly realize your partner is operating from a completely different ethical framework. What do you do then?
And the source material is fantastic here because it emphasizes training for those messy moments. It's about practicing thinking on your feet rather than just speaking clearly. The objective isn't just to respond, it's to respond tactfully and thoroughly.
And to illustrate this, the source provides an example dialogue between 2 colleagues, Alex and Maria.
Right.
They're facing a really high-stakes professional ethical dilemma. Alex is suggesting a slight bending of the truth to secure a major company advantage.
So a truly ambiguous corporate decision.
A very gray area. And this scenario is perfect because it forces the participants to navigate that grayness, to avoid making an easy judgment.
And Maria's response is the model here. It's the C1 model. It shows this advanced diplomatic skill.
What does she say?
She says, "That's a tough call. I believe in transparency, but one could argue that in highly competitive markets, this is strategic maneuvering rather than deception. It's a matter of interpreting the nuances of the contract."
Wow. So she doesn't shut down the conversation.
Not at all.
She actually opens it up for deeper, more sophisticated analysis.
Exactly.
And that ability to acknowledge complexity without committing to an extreme position, that is key. And that brings us to what the document calls the diplomatic toolkit.
Okay, I like the sound of that, a toolkit. So these are phrases.
They're conversational shock absorbers, is how I'd put it. They manage conflict and perception at the same time.
So what's the first one?
The first, and maybe most useful, is, that's a gray area. Just saying that the signals to the listener that you recognize the subtle difficulties. that a simplistic yes or no answer is just inappropriate here.
It buys you time to think, too.
It does. Then you have the empathetic brig, which is, I see where you're coming from.
Ah, that's a crucial one.
It's so crucial. It validates the other person's perspective, their effort, their rationale, without forcing you to agree with their conclusion.
So you maintain rapport even when you're clashing on opinions.
Precisely.
Oh.
And then, what if you reach a true impasse?
You need a graceful exit.
You do. And let's agree to disagree is the classic C1 way to do that. It resolves the conflict diplomatically, efficiently, and it signals mutual respect while preserving the relationship. It's a skill that takes real emotional control.
It really does.
And finally, there's the phrase that shows true consideration for others. If I were in your shoes, this moves your communication from just, cold analysis to genuine empathy. However, I often find that for advanced non-native speakers, using this toolkit authentically in a high-stakes, fast-paced situation is incredibly challenging.
It's not just about memorization.
No, it's about internalized timing.
That raises a great point. How do we internalize that timing and authenticity if the situations themselves are so unpredictable?
The document offers a brilliant practical application, self-recording. You take those prompts, the ethical dilemmas, complex current events, and you just articulate your stance out loud. You record your response using tools they recommend, like VoiceThread or SpeakPipe.
But the critical step is listening back.
That's the whole game. You listen back, you analyze your hesitation points, and you see exactly where you could have deployed one of these diplomatic phrases naturally.
It's like a sports coach reviewing game footage.
Exactly. You identify the missed opportunities for sophistication. Hashtag 1.2, deepening vocabulary and context.
Okay, so moving from spontaneous speech to the actual building blocks of the language vocabulary. The focus here shifts from quantity to quality.
Right.
The source material really insists that C1 learners have to move from breadth to depth. We're ditching the long randomized lists.
We're moving toward understanding the intricate life of a word. And the first element of this depth is mastering collocations.
Which is just the knowledge of which words naturally pair together.
Exactly. If you say powerful coffee, a native speaker hears a grammatical error, even though both words are technically correct.
We just say strong coffee.
We say strong coffee. And the subtle difference between bitter disappointment and, say, sour disappointment matters immensely.
One is correct, the other sounds just a little bit clumsy.
Right. And these small, constant errors, they accumulate. They're what prevent that seamless fluency.
And the second element is connotation.
This is where the emotional and social baggage of a word lives, and it's critical for avoiding offense or miscommunication.
Give us an example.
Okay, inexpensive is a positive or neutral term. It implies good value.
Right.
But cheap often carries a negative connotation of low quality, even if the price is exactly the same. Understanding connotation is essential for managing your tone, especially in professional writing.
So, if the strategy isn't lists, what is it? The source calls them thematic vocabulary clusters.
Yes. Instead of isolated words, you build these mental maps where words reinforce each other within a specific field or topic.
It's about building context.
It's all about context. This grouping strategy just maximizes retention and relevance. And the source gives an excellent detailed example using a business and innovation cluster.
These sound like high-value terms.
They are, and they're often interlinked. You have disruptive innovation, scalable model, market saturation, profit margin, competitive edge.
Okay, so let's break down the context for a couple of these. Let's take disruptive innovation. The source doesn't just define it as a new idea.
No, that would be too simple. It's defined as an innovation that fundamentally alters or creates an entirely new market.
Often rendering older technologies obsolete.
Precisely. And the tangible example is critical. Uber. Uber fundamentally changed the transportation industry. It didn't just make a better taxi. You have to anchor the term to its societal function.
And scalable model follows the same logic, I assume.
It does. It's defined as able to be expanded or increased efficiently without incurring proportional cost.
But the contextual application is key.
It's everything. The source gives this sentence. The startup software architecture is inherently scalable and can handle millions of users with minimal performance issues, making it attractive to investors.
Right, that immediately shows the word's financial and technical relevance. It cements the meaning far better than a simple thesaurus entry ever could. Hashtag tag tag 1.3, enhancing fluency and subtle speech.
So to achieve that effortless, natural fluency, we have to address the actual sound of the language. And the source strongly advocates for the shadowing technique as the most effective path toward improving accent, rhythm, and intonation.
Shadowing is a true vocal workout.
It really is.
You listen to high-quality native audio, a podcast, a news report, and you repeat the words either simultaneously or just a split second behind.
Mimicking everything.
Everything. The cadence, the pitch, the rhythm, even the pauses. You are literally training the biomechanics of your mouth and your ear.
And the focus areas are very precise. First, there's intonation.
Which is the melody of the sentence.
The melody. The rising and falling pitch that conveys emotion or clarifies if something is a question. Second, sentence stress. Where is the speaker placing emphasis to signal the most important part of the meaning?
Because if you shift the stress, you can shift the meaning entirely.
Completely. And maybe most challenging for advanced learners is connected speech.
This is a big one.
It's huge. This is the phenomenon where words aren't spoken in isolation. They run together, they change their sounds.
The classic example in the source material is the shift from the formal articulation, what do you want to do?
To the natural rapid-fire flow of what I want to do.
Right.
And connected speech involves several subphenomena, like assimilation, where one sound becomes like a neighboring sound, and elision, where a sound is just completely dropped.
And you can't fully comprehend fast native speech or produce it authentically without training your ear and your voice to handle these phonetic shifts.
It's impossible. And to make this practice effective, the source recommends using authentic, unsimplified audio that is both high quality and engaging.
So what do they suggest?
They specifically suggest the daily for contemporary current events.
Good one.
Hardcore history for that long-form immersive storytelling. And Freakonomics for those thought-provoking, high-level conversational discussions.
And the integration of technology here is, it's non-negotiable.
Totally. Tools like Forvo let you hear exact pronunciations in multiple accents, which is vital for a global communicator.
Right.
Youglish lets you see how a specific word or phrase is used within countless YouTube contexts, giving you immediate, authentic application.
And what about feedback?
Well, personalized feedback apps like ILSA Speak can provide measurable data on where your pronunciation deviates from native models. This is about precision engineering your speech patterns. Hashtag 1.4, mastering subtle grammatical structures.
So once you're at C1, grammar moves from being about necessity to being about style.
It's about achieving expressive range and sophistication.
And the source material details 4 structures that dramatically elevate the style and precision of your communication.
The first are mixed conditionals. We're moving way past the simple first, second, and third conditionals here.
Right, this is advanced.
Mixed conditionals combine a past unreal condition with a present result. The standard example is, if I had taken that job last year, that's the past unreal part, I would be living in New York, now the present result.
And that structure lets you articulate the lasting, complex consequences of hypothetical past decisions.
Exactly. The second is the wonderfully dramatic inversion for emphasis.
I love this one.
It's great. It involves inverting the subject and verb structure, usually after a negative adverbial at the beginning of the sentence.
And it creates a really powerful stylistic flourish.
It does, especially in formal or emotional contexts. So instead of saying, I have never seen such an incredible performance, you use inversion.
Never have I seen such an incredible performance.
It instantly raises the register. It highlights the extremity of the statement.
Okay, and the third structure, which I feel is often completely glossed over in lower level classes, but is so essential for stylistic writing, is the cleft sentence.
Absolutely. The critique we saw noted that we needed to define and really exemplify this one fully.
So what is it?
Cleft sentences are structures that let the speaker or writer put special emphasis on one particular part of the sentence, the focus element.
How?
They achieve this by splitting a single clause into 2 clauses, often using structures that start with it is or what.
Okay, so if the base sentence is, John delivered the package yesterday, how would you use a cleft sentence to emphasize John?
You'd use the it cleft. You'd say, it was John who delivered the package yesterday.
So the emphasis is now clearly on John.
Yeah.
It implies maybe someone else was supposed to do it.
Precisely. And if you wanted to emphasize when it happened, you'd say, it was yesterday that John delivered the package. This is a fundamental tool for directing the listener's attention and managing the flow of information.
And finally, the structure that truly transforms formal writing and speech. Nominalization.
Nominalization is the process of converting verbs or adjectives into nouns. Now, it might seem counterintuitive to make a sentence longer, but it serves a critical function,
Which is?
consiseness in complex formal contexts and objectivity. Instead of the active, slightly wordier, they decided to postpone the meeting, the nominalized formal equivalent is the decision to postpone the meeting.
Why is that compression seen as so sophisticated, particularly in academic or legal writing?
Because it often removes the active human agent. It makes the statement sound objective and authoritative.
I see.
The government failed to enforce the regulations is active. It assigns blame. But the failure of regulation enforcement focuses the discussion on the concept of the failure itself rather than the person responsible.
So it lends a greater air of impersonal formality.
Exactly. Mastering nominalization is absolutely essential for producing high-level reports and academic papers. Hashtag 1.5 refining reading, writing, and daily practice. So with sophistication as our goal, we have to refine our reading and writing habits. Advanced reading is no longer about just comprehension.
Right, it's about analysis and genre exposure.
It is. The source material urges C1 learners to diversify their reading aggressively.
What does that mean in practice?
It means tackling complex, high-register texts, things like academic journals, legal documents, and top-tier opinion journalism from publications like The Economist or The New Yorker. The language in these sources is unsimplified and often very stylistically challenging.
And it's not passive reading. The document outlines a crucial active reading strategy.
This involves skimming for the main idea first, then scanning for specific details, but most critically, it's about highlighting and defining new vocabulary in context.
And summarizing each paragraph in your own words.
Yes, that summarizing step is the active part that transforms consumption into production. It forces you to internalize the structure and the vocabulary.
And for writing, the mandate is simple, if a little brutal.
Which is?
Edit ruthlessly. Advanced writers have to focus on sentence variety, ensuring their tone is perfectly calibrated for their audience, using strong topic sentences, and connecting complex ideas smoothly.
That smooth connection often relies on high-level linking words. The document provides an excellent before and after comparison.
Who is the before?
The choppy before version is, many people think social media is bad. It makes people feel sad. They compare themselves a lot.
Very basic.
Very. Now, the sophisticated after version elevates the text by using complex phrasing and connectors. Social media can negatively impact mental health by encouraging constant comparison, which consequently often leads to feelings of inadequacy and anxiety.
So using linking words like consequently, nonetheless, and in contrast provides that logical flow you expect in advanced discourse.
Exactly. And we can't forget the cultural layer here. Idiomatic language. True fluency requires understanding and deploying these phrases naturally.
The source gives some practical high-utility examples.
It does. Bite the bullet, which means to do something unpleasant but necessary, like taking a painful but required step in a project.
And the ball is in your court.
A classic metaphor for action. It's now your turn to make the next decision or take the next step. Deploying these correctly is a hallmark of genuine cultural fluency.
So, to tie this all together, the source provides a highly focused, high-impact, daily C1 English routine.
And this isn't about casual study. It's intentional practice designed for rapid improvement.
It's a structured workout.
It is. 15 minutes dedicated to reading the news aloud, which trains both comprehension and pronunciation.
Okay.
10 minutes for updating your thematic vocabulary notebook to ensure you're getting that contextual review.
Right.
A critical 20 minutes of shadowing authentic audio. 15 minutes of dedicated journal writing to practice those new grammatical structures, and 15 minutes of speaking practice, maybe using a language exchange app like HelloTalk or Tandem to apply those diplomatic phrases spontaneously.
That consistent, intentional practice is the real difference maker, isn't it? It moves you from being just a competent performer to a mastery-level communicator. And that intentionality is exactly the skill we need to take with us into the next critical area of life. Our careers.
So if the C1 leap is about the intentional analysis of language, then career choice demands an equally intentional analysis of your own values and your risk tolerance.
Right.
So we now shift our focus entirely to this systematic, objective comparison of entrepreneurship versus traditional employment.
And this isn't just a choice between two jobs. It's a choice between two entirely different life philosophies.
With massive trade-offs.
Massive trade-offs that extend far beyond just salary. The advanced learner has to move past the romanticized ideals, the glamorous startup founder or the stable executive, and look soberly at the facts. Hashtag tag 2.1, defining the paths. Okay, let's start with just clarity. How does the source material define these two fundamentally different professional paths?
Entrepreneurship is defined as the act of creation. It involves developing, creating, and running a business.
And the fundamental drivers are what?
Profit, solving novel market problems, identifying unique opportunities, and crucially, assuming substantial risk.
The example they give of turning a passion, like baking, into a successful, scalable online business really captures that essence of building an asset from nothing.
It does. It requires a singular focus on vision. Traditional employment, on the other hand, is defined by structure.
Right, working for an established company, generally within fixed 9-to-5 parameters.
Receiving a set salary, holding a defined job title, and having clearly set responsibilities. The motivation for employment centers on stability, predictability, and often comprehensive benefits.
So we are really comparing the mindset of a creator owner against the mindset of an optimizer team member who's operating within an established system. Hashtag tag 2.2 systematic comparison of key factors.
The source material's systematic comparison is really powerful because it forces us to evaluate these paths across factors that truly matter.
And let's start with the largest divergence, risk.
For the entrepreneur, the risk is inherently high. It's often existential. Personal time, savings, reputation, it's all directly on the line. The failure of the venture is a personal financial catastrophe.
Whereas for the employee, the risk is low to moderate. I mean, while job security is never absolute,
Of course not.
your personal capital remains generally protected.
And the type of stress differs too. The entrepreneur faces existential stress, while the employee faces operational stress.
That's a great way to put it. And that leads directly to income potential.
This is the massive lure of entrepreneurship, isn't it? The potential for income is unlimited. It's directly tied to the scale and success of the business. But it is highly uncertain and often fluctuates wildly, especially in those crucial early years.
You contrast that with the employee whose salary is fixed, predictable, and stable. It provides comfort, but it is fundamentally capped by the company's pay scale and market rates.
And the cost of that income potential is reflected in work hours. Entrepreneurs rarely have a predictable schedule. They face long, irregular hours, nights, weekends, holidays, because the survival of the business is contingent on their constant effort. The work never truly stops.
Employees, on the other hand, benefit from generally more structured 9-to-5 schedules.
Right. It allows for potentially better, more predictable work-life balance and clear boundaries between professional and personal time.
And speaking of boundaries, let's look at stability.
The entrepreneur's stability is a direct mirror of their business's immediate success. If the market shifts or a product fails, that stability can vanish instantly.
The employee generally enjoys a more stable paycheck and institutional safety nets, like insurance and HR support.
At least until major economic downturns or corporate restructuring occurs.
True. Now, for the creative mind, creative freedom often outweighs financial security.
This is the magnetic core of entrepreneurship. Complete control over the vision, the strategy, the execution. They are the final decision maker.
While employees, by contrast, have to operate within defined company structures.
Established guidelines, a chain of command. It results in significantly less autonomy.
And the final two core comparison factors here, responsibility and career path.
For the entrepreneur, it's sole responsibility. The ultimate burden rests entirely on their shoulders. This is incredibly high pressure, but for some, it's also highly motivating.
And the employee's responsibility.
It's typically shared, delegated, and managed within a team structure, which reduces that individual exposure to failure.
And the career path itself.
Entrepreneurs are entirely self-directed. They carve their own way, they define their own milestones, and they answer only to themselves and their market.
While employees follow a more structured, predictable path, often defined by specific promotion criteria, salary bands, and moving up an established corporate ladder. Hashtag tag 2.3, mindset, learning, and ownership. So it's clear these paths require two fundamentally different mindsets. What are the required psychological traits for each role, according to the source?
The entrepreneurial mindset is defined by being visionary, being comfortable with deep uncertainty, big picture focused, and highly skilled in risk assessment. They are energized by the unknown.
And the employee mindset.
It's often task-oriented, dedicated to execution, focused on efficiency, and highly values structure, clarity, and collaboration within a system.
And the concept of ownership really dictates everything else, doesn't it?
It's the foundational difference. The entrepreneur has full ownership of the asset, the potential rewards, and critically, the full liability. Every success builds their equity.
The employee is working for the business. They are a necessary component, but they don't possess that same ownership stake.
And that lack of asset ownership is the central trade-off for security.
And the learning style required for success in each path is just worlds apart.
Oh, completely. The entrepreneur is in a state of perpetual, self-directed, constant learning. It's a genuine trial by fire.
Right. They have to rapidly acquire expertise in sales, marketing, finance, operations, all at the same time.
They just figure it out on the fly. The employee typically benefits from more structured, guided learning, formal training programs, mentorship, and clear opportunities for professional development that are subsidized by the employer. Hashtag 2.4 environment, motivation, and exit strategies.
The required social environment also seems to split the two roles, starting with networking.
For the entrepreneur, networking is aggressively outward focused. You're connecting with clients, investors, potential partners, suppliers. Their network is their lifeblood.
Whereas for the employee, networking is generally more inward focused.
Right. You're building strong internal relationships with colleagues, supervisors, and cross-functional departments to maximize efficiency within the organization.
The physical workplace used to be a very clear differentiator, though I think the pandemic has blurred those lines a bit.
It has, but even with remote work flexibility, the difference persists. Entrepreneurs often retain ultimate flexibility working wherever their productivity demands.
And traditional employment, even if it's remote, usually requires adherence to specific protocols, tools, and a defined schedule tied to an organizational structure.
Which means less personal choice over the physical environment.
So what drives them? Motivation seems to diverge along these internal versus external lines.
That's a perfect way to frame it. Entrepreneurs are driven primarily by internal factors: passion, the pursuit of their vision, complete autonomy. The internal desire to create and lead is paramount.
And employees?
Often driven by external factors: a predictable salary, comprehensive benefits, the security of a large organization, and external rewards like promotions and bonuses.
And the ultimate goal, the exit strategy. How do they cash out?
The entrepreneur is building an asset with the explicit goal of an eventual sale, a merger, or scaling the business to the point of managerial independence. It's a structured financial exit.
The employee's exit strategy is typically traditional.
Right. Retirement, resignation to take a new job, or an internal promotion to a non-working role like the board.
The source brings this whole analysis to life through the dialogue between Emma and Liam. Liam chose the creative freedom of his own marketing agency, willingly accepting all that uncertainty. Emma chose stability and structure, maximizing her climb within a larger corporation.
And that dialogue is the necessary synthesis. It proves that this entire analysis is really a tool for self-reflection. You need to objectively weigh these pros and cons against your deeply held values.
So let's briefly recap those comprehensive pros and cons. For the entrepreneur, the pros are creative control, high income potential, schedule flexibility, and innovation.
And the cons?
The cons are massive financial uncertainty, demanding long hours, extremely high stress, and the need to be competent across a huge range of disparate skills.
And for the employee, the pros are a steady, predictable paycheck, comprehensive benefits, a clear and guided career path, and the ability to focus responsibility narrowly within their role.
But the cons are limited creative freedom, a capped income potential, the inevitable presence of office politics, and the inherent risk of corporate layoffs or restructuring.
So this all boils down to critical self-assessment, and the source material asks these great guiding questions that force you to confront your core values. How do you truly define success? Which work style aligns best with your psychological needs, rigid structure, or complete flexibility?
And that most telling question.
Yes. If money were no object and you only had to work for fulfillment, which lifestyle would you choose?
That answer is often the most honest path to your ideal professional environment. Okay, so we have applied critical thinking to language structure and to career strategy. Now, we apply those same skills, intentionality, nuance, understanding context to the complex, often chaotic world of 21st century love and relationships.
And this field is perhaps the fastest evolving of the three we're examining.
It seems to be.
It is fundamentally fluid. Technology, evolving societal acceptance, the dismantling of traditional power structures, all of this has dramatically changed the social contract of partnership. What was once fixed is now almost entirely negotiable. Hashtag tag tag 3.1, the defining characteristics of modern love. So when we analyze the core shifts, the source really stresses the move away from prescriptive roles and toward fluidity and flexibility. In modern partnerships, roles, who manages the finances, who takes care of the domestic sphere, are entirely negotiated. They're not fixed by gender or tradition anymore.
And that is a radical break from the traditional, often rigid patriarchal model where gender roles were predefined. Man as the primary provider, woman as the primary homemaker.
Exactly. And modern relationships require constant high-level communication to define those roles.
Which is why the source stresses the absolute necessity of emotional intelligence.
You can't get by without it now. Relationships today require high standards of open, honest communication, empathy, and the ability to understand and respond appropriately to complex emotional states.
You can't rely on a social script or external rules anymore.
No, you have to rely on genuine emotional connection.
And the emphasis on individual autonomy is profound.
It really is. Modern love values maintaining a strong sense of self, individual hobbies, and separate friendships within the partnership. The goal is connection, not merging into a single, potentially codependent entity.
And that commitment to personal fulfillment rather than obligation is why we see the rise of cohabiting.
Right, living together unmarried.
And partners delaying or skipping marriage entirely. Furthermore, the modern framework champions the wide acceptance of diverse relationship structures, orientations, and identities. It just reflects a greater societal tolerance for variation.
And even the concept of the soulmate has evolved.
How so?
It's moved away from that mystical, passive idea of a preordained destiny. And it's moved toward the realization that a deep partnership requires finding profound compatibility, shared values, and most importantly, a mutual conscious commitment to actively building the relationship day after day.
So it's an act of will, not a stroke of fate.
Precisely. Hashtag tag tag 3.2, technology's double-edged sword and digital vocabulary.
And the engine of so much of this change is dating technology.
Absolutely.
The positive side is clear. These platforms demolish geographical boundaries. They allow individuals with niche interests and values to find partners globally.
That's the incredible expansion of choice. However, the source material focuses very heavily on the negative digital phenomena that have emerged.
Creating a whole new and often unsettling digital vocabulary.
It has.
Let's start with the first one, the concept of swipe culture.
Swipe culture describes the environment of rapid, high-volume evaluation of potential partners based on minimal information, often just a few photos and a short bio. This environment prioritizes superficial attributes and speed over depth.
And what are the sociological implications of this high volume of choice? What does that do to us?
Well, it fosters a sense of disposability.
Yeah.
If there are, 100,000 potential partners just to swipe away, the incentive to invest heavily in emotional work or compromise with any single person, it diminishes.
So this constant availability can erode commitment and depth.
It contributes to the feeling that something better is always just around the corner.
And this avoidance of difficult communication gives rise to phenomena like ghosting.
Ghosting. It's the abrupt, complete vanishing from a relationship without any explanation, no text, no call, just silent.
It's a profoundly passive-aggressive communication avoidance tactic.
And it's enabled by the ease of digital disengagement. It violates the basic social contract of closure and causes significant confusion and emotional hurt to the person on the receiving end.
And then there's the most deceptive of the digital phenomena, catfishing.
Catfishing is the act of creating a completely fabricated online identity, often using stolen photos and fictionalized details.
For what purpose?
To deceive, manipulate, or gain financial benefit from potential partners. It highlights the inherent vulnerability when trust is based solely on digital signals. It really demonstrates the dark side of anonymity.
So the source is clear. While technology offers choice, that convenience has introduced a whole host of ethical ambiguities and new challenges to cultivating genuine emotional security. Hashtag tag tag 3.3, the new relationship vocabulary.
So as these traditional structures have dissolved, the need for new language to define ambiguous or non-monogamous relationships has just skyrocketed.
Yeah. And this new vocabulary is essential for navigating modern social contracts.
It is.
The first, and perhaps the most common one we hear about, is the situationship.
The situationship. This is that ambiguous middle ground, more than friends, less than a labeled, committed, defined relationship.
It is characterized by inconsistency.
And a distinct lack of clear communication about future expectations.
So what makes situationships so complicated, according to the source?
The ambiguity itself. Because there is no label, there are no explicit boundaries.
Which often results in one or both individuals developing unspoken expectation.
Exactly, and that leads to anxiety, confusion, and feelings of being in limbo. The communication burden is so high because the partners are forced to read signals without the benefit of a defined contract.
Then we move into relationships that consciously redefine commitment. First up, open relationships.
An open relationship is a partnership where both individuals explicitly agree to have other sexual or romantic relationships outside the core dynamic.
And the absolute core requirement here is mutual consent.
Mutual consent, transparency, and the establishment of clear, often very complex, emotional and physical boundaries.
And we have to make the distinction with polyamory.
Yes. Polyamory is defined as the practice and often the core desire for multiple, loving, intimate, deep emotional relationships simultaneously.
So unlike open relationships, which might focus primarily on external sexual connection.
Right. Polyamory emphasizes the capacity for deep emotional bonds with multiple partners, all conducted with the full knowledge and consent of everyone involved. These structures demand hypervigilance in communication and scheduling. Hashtag 3.4 shifts in roles and cross-cultural dynamics. The shift in gender roles is, I think, perhaps the most profound change in modern relationships. We are witnessing this massive societal shift away from the legacy of patriarchal structures toward the egalitarian partnership.
Egalitarianism, meaning roles are negotiated solely based on skill, preference, and mutual contribution, regardless of gender.
Right, and this involves continuous negotiation over finances, career prioritization, and family responsibilities. It demands a high degree of flexibility from both partners.
And as globalization continues, the complexity of cross-cultural relationships just increases exponentially. The source details the unique challenges these partnerships face beyond standard relationship difficulties.
Even when both partners speak a common language, the subtle nuances, the ingrained cultural references, the complex jokes, they can be so easily lost,
leading to unintended offense or alienation.
But the real challenge is the deeper cultural clash. This involves fundamental differences in values, norms, and expectations around family dynamics, financial management, child rearing practices, social rituals.
For instance, differing views on the importance of the extended family versus the nuclear unit can be a source of a profound structural conflict.
It can. And the logistical hurdles are immense, navigating visas, managing long-distance dynamics, and that critical, life-altering decision of where to build a shared home.
So success in these partnerships requires a high degree of what the source calls intercultural communication competence.
Which means being inherently self-aware, adaptable, sensitive to nonverbal cues, and having a deep willingness to learn and accept your partner's fundamental cultural background.
And if one partner undergoes assimilation, having to adapt significantly to the customs of the other's culture, that adjustment has to be recognized, supported, and negotiated constantly.
Absolutely.
We've introduced a lot of nuanced terminology in this section. Let's finish with a final vocabulary check, just to clarify the distinctions between healthy and unhealthy bonds.
Good idea. We've established cohabitation and the necessity of emotional intimacy, that deep connection based on vulnerability and trust.
Right.
But we have to be very clear on the boundary between that intimacy and the destructive pattern of codependency.
Codependency, as the source warns, is an unhealthy emotional reliance, where one person systematically prioritizes their partner's needs, identity, and emotions above their own,
resulting in blurred boundaries, chronic anxiety, and an unbalanced, unsustainable relationship dynamic. The ability to define and understand these structures, from the casual situationship to the complex cross-cultural dynamic, is just vital for navigating the relational complexity of our time with intention and security. #outro.
So we have completed this incredibly broad deep dive, connecting the meticulous study of advanced language to the chaotic yet crucial decisions of career and love.
And the underlying thread linking all three of these domains is the requirement for intentionality, continuous refinement, and critical analysis to navigate that complexity.
Right. The subtle structures in advanced grammar are mirrored by the complex negotiations of egalitarian partnerships.
And the depth of your vocabulary is analogous to the necessary depth of your personal career analysis.
The C1 level isn't a finish line. It's a powerful metaphor for life. It signals that you are ready to stop mastering the basics and begin mastering the nuance, paying attention to those tiny, often hidden details that separate mere competence from true expertise.
This entire journey is a process of refinement and of becoming, and to leave you with a profound thought that applies equally to language learning, career growth, and love, the source material ends with this challenging quote.
What is it?
Relationships are less about finding the right person and more about becoming the right person.
Oh, that shifts the focus entirely onto self-improvement and active participation.
It does.
It asks you to bring your most intentional, refined, and critically analyzed self to every challenge. So as you integrate these lessons on language, work, and love, consider this. What does it mean for you to become the right person in your current pursuits?
What specific intentional practice will you commit to today?
That is the ultimate deep dive, a lifelong project that starts with intentional action. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
We look forward to diving deeper with you next time.
Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we cut through the noise and synthesize the knowledge you need to succeed in a world that just never, ever stops changing.
Today, we're embarking on a pretty crucial exploration, I think. We're not just, listing trends. We're really trying to dissect the blueprint for professional success right now in the 2020s.
Because it's more than just having the right technical skills.
Exactly. Success now, it demands the right internal operating system, a resilient mindset, and absolutely critically, the advanced communication tools you need to thrive when everything is in upheaval.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. This deep dive, it synthesizes insights from high-level strategic research, behavioral economics, and advanced communication theory.
And our mission is pretty clear.
Yeah, it is. We want to equip you with the strategic foresight you need to maximize your effectiveness in those high-stakes situations, both at work and, frankly, in your personal life.
We've sort of organized the material into 3 big pillars, all interconnected. First, we're going to tackle the massive structural changes, the future of work, as people call it.
Okay.
Then we dive into the internal glitches, the things that undermine our own judgment, cognitive biases.
Right.
And finally, we get to execution, how to master the techniques you need to secure mutual success through, collaborative negotiation.
The common thread here, it seems to me, is adaptability and really mastery. We're trying to pull out the most practical, the most actionable nuggets of knowledge for you.
So you can walk away not just informed, but genuinely empowered.
Empowered to pivot, to think clearly under pressure, and to negotiate your worth with real confidence.
Absolutely. The world of work is just demanding a higher level of preparation than ever before. So let's jump in.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We're starting with the external environment. The sources call it the Great Reshuffle.
A paradigm shift.
It is. It's driven by these massive forces, AI, remote work, the gig economy, and it requires us to completely redefine what job security even means.
And we should probably start with the biggest one, the one that causes the most anxiety and opportunity.
Automation and artificial intelligence.
Yeah. The initial reaction, that sort of gut feeling about AI, is almost always fear. Fear of job replacement.
Sure, the robots are coming for my job.
Right. But the more sophisticated analyses we reviewed, they shift that focus entirely. It's not about replacement, it's about job transformation.
Okay, transformation. What does that mean practically?
It means that AI, especially generative AI and machine learning, it's designed to excel at routine, predictable tasks.
So data crunching, pattern recognition.
Exactly. Anything that involves high-volume data analysis or synthesizing existing information, if your job can be mapped out on a flowchart, you should probably be a little concerned.
But what does that transformation look like on the ground? Give us a concrete example. A real professional whose job is changing, not just disappearing.
Okay, let's take a junior accountant or maybe a financial analyst. A huge part of their job, historically, was manually compiling spreadsheets, reconciling transactions, drafting basic reports.
All the grunt work?
The grunt work. An AI system can now do 80% of that in seconds, but the analyst's value doesn't just vanish, it actually elevates.
So they're now free, or maybe I should say forced, to focus on that other 20%.
Precisely. And that 20% is where the real value is. It's the critical thinking, the high-level interpretation, communicating complex findings to executives who don't have a financial background.
So it's the strategy.
It's developing creative, strategic recommendations based on the data the AI compiled. The job transforms from being a data processor to a strategic advisor.
Which means the required skills just completely pivot. It's not about technical execution anymore.
No, it's about human interpretation and persuasion. It puts this massive premium on uniquely human skills: emotional intelligence, collaboration, complex problem solving, and critically creativity.
Skills that are, for now anyway, pretty resistant to automation.
Yes, and the source material really stresses this point. This is why we're seeing this urgent, continuous need for what they call upskilling and reskilling.
You can't just rely on a degree you got 10 years ago.
No, that's professionally insufficient now. You have to embrace lifelong learning, not as a hobby, but as a genuine survival strategy.
You have to see yourself as a collaborator with AI.
Your goal is to manage the tools, not to compete with them.
That's a huge philosophical shift, isn't it? We used to think of education as a sprint to a finish line.
And now it's a marathon. It's ongoing. If you're not actively learning, you are, by definition, falling behind the capabilities of the machine.
So successful professionals need to be constantly auditing their own skills.
I'm asking themselves, if an AI was implemented next year, which of my duties would it absorb?
And how fast can I learn the strategic skills to manage that AI?
Yeah. Adaptability in this context is really just preemptive learning.
That sets a pretty demanding stage. Okay, so moving on from AI, let's look at the second massive driver of change: the explosion of remote and hybrid work.
This started out as a necessity, of course, but it's become this huge, complex experiment for society and for corporations.
The advantages have been, shouted from the rooftops: unprecedented flexibility,
Reclaiming 2 hours a day by eliminating the commute.
a potential for much better work-life balance. And you see the rise of, what do they call it, asynchronous work.
Yes, asynchronous work. It's a key concept.
Can you define that for us in practice? Because it sounds great, but I imagine it can be messy to actually implement.
Asynchronous just means abandoning the rigid idea that everyone has to be online and responsive at the exact same time.
So fewer live meetings.
Right. Instead of a live meeting, a team might use a tool to record video updates. Colleagues can then watch that information on their own schedule, whether they're in London or Tokyo, and contribute when they're most productive.
It respects time zones, and it respects that some people are early birds and some are night owls.
And it shifts the whole emphasis from face time to actual output. Your work product becomes the only real metric.
Okay, but the sources must highlight some major disadvantages, right?
Oh, absolutely. This flexibility often leads to digital burnout. That feeling of being always on because the boundaries between home and office just dissolve.
In isolation.
Isolation is a huge psychological toll. It makes that kind of spontaneous collaboration, bumping into someone in the hallway, almost impossible. It's hard to build a real company culture.
But the most subtle danger, and maybe the most insidious one, is something you brought up earlier: proximity bias.
It's a critical, unconscious vulnerability.
And it sounds like a corporate death sentence for anyone working remotely.
It can be. Proximity bias is just the natural human tendency for managers to favor the employees they physically see every day.
You just think about it from a manager's perspective. They're overloaded. They need someone for an urgent project. Who do they grab?
The person they just saw by the coffee machine. Not the person they have to consciously remember to schedule a Zoom call with. They favor the visible, the present.
And this isn't usually coming from a place of malice, is it?
No, not at all. It manifests as systemic oversight. It means remote employees are just consistently overlooked for those crucial opportunities.
Like the impromptu mentorship session, or being pulled into a strategic brainstorming lunch.
Or getting assigned that highly visible career-making project. These are the soft opportunities that actually lead to promotions.
So even if the remote worker has flawless performance metrics, they're at risk. They might be seen as less engaged just because of distance.
That's the risk. And it raises a huge question. Is this bias something we can fix? Or is permanent remote work just doomed by this flaw in how we manage people?
What does the research say?
It's challenging. The sources suggest that just being more intentional isn't enough. It will fail. You need structural changes that force equality.
Like what? What kind of structural changes?
Things like implementing mandatory performance dashboards so that output is universally visible to everyone, or formalizing mentorship pairings so they don't just happen spontaneously at the office.
Maybe rotating people through in-office weeks to make sure everyone gets equal face time over the course of a year.
Exactly. You have to, in a sense, industrialize fairness.
You have to replace the informal, spontaneous nature of the office with rigid, transparent systems.
If you don't, Your remote workers will, by definition, become second-class citizens when it comes to their career path. It raises the stakes for every single manager out there.
You can't manage by walking around anymore.
You have to manage by data, by metrics, and by formalized communication.
That's a powerful challenge. Okay, let's talk about the third and final pillar of this great reshuffle, the accelerating expansion of the gig economy.
This represents, I think, the most profound individual shift away from that traditional career path. 40 years with one company.
The gold watch and the pension.
That's gone. Now we talk about a portfolio career. You're piecing together your income from multiple sources. You're a freelancer, a consultant, an independent contractor.
And this isn't just for creative fields anymore, is it? We're seeing portfolio careers in accounting, engineering, even HR management.
Everywhere. And the appeal is, well, it's intoxicating. The big draw is complete autonomy.
Right. You choose your projects, you fire toxic clients, you set your own hours.
You dictate your own professional life. For anyone who values control over, say, security, it's the ideal.
But that economy comes at a really high price. The trade-off is risk and instability.
When you become your own boss, you also become your own HR department, your own accounting department, your own legal team.
You're taking on all the operational and financial risk yourself.
Exactly. There's no traditional safety net, no paid sick leave, no 401k match, no subsidized health insurance, and critically, no predictable income.
You're suddenly responsible for self-employment taxes, budgeting for the dry spells, funding your own retirement.
It requires a massive psychological shift. You go from being an employee to being the CEO of a company of one.
And that must demand incredible self-discipline.
Exceptional self-discipline, not just with deadlines, but in proactively managing your time and your client relationships. It requires rigorous financial planning to handle that fluctuating income.
And the most exhausting part, I'd imagine, is the constant hustle.
Always. When you finish one project, the next one isn't guaranteed. You are perpetually marketing yourself, networking, selling your value just to maintain a steady workflow.
So if we synthesize all three of these forces, AI demanding new skills, hybrid work demanding new structures, the gig economy demanding self-management, it leads to one kind of unavoidable conclusion.
This stable, predictable, one-company career is becoming the exception, not the rule.
Adaptability is the new job security.
Your success is now tied directly to your ability to learn new skills fast, to pivot between different ways of working, and to negotiate your own worth over and over again.
That is a compelling, if a little bit demanding picture of the external world.
Yeah.
Which I think is the perfect transition. If the outside world demands constant adaptation, we have to make sure our internal decision-making system, our own mind, is up to the task.
Yes. We can't afford mental glitches when making high-stakes decisions about our careers.
So let's dive into part 2. The glitches in our thinking, overcoming cognitive biases.
Cognitive biases are so fascinating because they feel so intuitive, but they systematically lead us to the wrong conclusions.
They're essentially mental shortcuts, right? Heuristics.
Exactly. They evolved to help us make rapid decisions. When you're faced with a complex situation, your brain defaults to what psychologists call System 1 thinking. It's fast, it's intuitive, and it's very error-prone. It's designed to save energy.
And while that might have saved our ancestors from a lion in the grass,
in the complex, data-rich modern world, these same heuristics lead to profoundly irrational decisions, especially in business, in investing, and in career planning.
So understanding them is the first step to activating System 2.
The slow, deliberate, logical part of our brain.
Let's start with, I would argue, the most pervasive bias, the one that poisons everything from public discourse to team meetings, confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias is that tendency we all have to subconsciously search for, interpret, and remember information that already aligns with what we believe.
We're not seeking truth, we're seeking affirmation.
Yes. And in today's information ecosystem, this bias is just put on steroids.
Absolutely. The algorithm-driven world of social media and news feeds is basically a confirmation bias machine.
It is. You click on a few articles with one point of view, and you'll be served 1,000 more just like it, filtering out anything that contradicts you. It creates these rigid, impenetrable echo chambers,
where genuine debate becomes almost impossible because people are operating from fundamentally different sets of facts.
Exactly. And in a professional setting, it means you only hear data that supports the project you already want to launch. You become blind to the warning signs.
So the CEO is convinced their new product is a winner, will only pay attention to the market research that confirms it.
And they'll selectively ignore the studies showing low consumer interest. The failure is baked in long before the launch.
How do you fight something that's so hardwired into how we see the world?
It takes extreme discipline. You have to practice what they call intellectual humility.
Which means more than just reading an article from the other side.
It means actively engaging with it, treating it as potentially valuable data. You have to build routines that force you to confront contradictory evidence.
What's a practical way to do that?
One method is to formally assign a devil's advocate role in a meeting. Before a big decision, one person's only job is to find all the evidence against the proposal.
So you force the counterargument into the room.
But the ultimate self-check is asking yourself this powerful question. What specific objective piece of evidence would it take for me to change my mind on this?
Wow.
If you can't answer that question, you aren't being intellectually humble. You're trapped by your bias.
That's profound. It forces you to define the edges of your uncertainty. Okay, let's talk about the bias that wrecks careers and sinks companies. The sunk cost fallacy.
Ah, yes, the sunk cost fallacy. This is that irrational need to keep investing time, money, or effort into something just because you've already invested so much in the past.
Even when all the current evidence says that quitting is the smart move.
It's the feeling of, I have to finish this terrible movie because I've already watched 2 hours of it.
Or pouring more money into fixing a car that should be junked just because you put a new engine in it last year.
That emotional resistance, that feeling that the past resources will be wasted if you stop, that's the core of it. The emotional brain just hates to admit a loss.
And it tricks you into thinking that more investment will somehow rescue the initial investment.
Which is a financial absurdity. That money is already gone. It's sunk. It's irretrievable. The decision to continue has to be based only on future prospects versus future costs.
And the sources have a reframing mechanism for this, right? A way to break that emotional loop.
A brilliant one. You have to ask yourself, if I were starting from scratch today with no prior investment, knowing what I know now, would I still choose to make this investment?
And that just instantly clears the mental clutter. It forces a rational, forward-looking assessment. The past spending becomes irrelevant, which is what it should be.
It's a very practical way to neutralize the emotion and let your logical brain, System 2, take over.
Okay, next up is a bias with huge social and professional impact. The Dunning-Kruger effect.
This is one of the most misunderstood biases out there. It states that people with low confidence in a specific area tend to severely overestimate their own abilities.
They're so unskilled, they lack the self-awareness to even recognize their own incompetence.
Exactly. They don't know enough to realize how much they don't know.
This explains that unshakable confidence you sometimes see from people who are demonstrably wrong.
They're operating from a flawed reality. They see the task as simple because they haven't encountered its true complexity, so they think they're masters of it.
But the flip side is just as much of a problem, isn't it?
It is. Highly competent people often underestimate their own ability. They suffer from the opposite effect.
Because the task seems easy to them, they just assume it must be easy for everyone else.
Yes. And that leads them to undervalue their own expertise, especially when they're negotiating. They lack the social calibration to realize how rare their skill set is.
So Dunning-Kruger creates this double problem in the workplace. The incompetent are overconfident, while the truly competent are underconfident and undervalue themselves.
And the antidote, again, is a commitment to lifelong learning, but you have to pair it with a commitment to external validation.
You mean actively seeking out honest, critical feedback?
From people you trust. And then you have to be willing to actually digest that critique as a data point, not as a personal attack.
Which means being willing to hear that you are, in fact, not good at something. That's a tough pill to swallow for most people.
It is, but the highest achievers are often the ones who are best at creating systems that force them to confront their own flaws.
This whole process of managing our biases is called debiasing.
Yeah.
And the goal isn't to eliminate them, because we can't.
They're part of our human hardware. The goal is mitigation, building systems to manage their impact.
And that requires forcing ourselves to use that slow System 2 thinking. But how do you practically do that when you're under pressure? You can't just tell yourself, think slower.
No, you can't. You need structural methods. The sources talk about using things like pre-mortems.
Okay, what's a pre-mortem?
Before you launch a big project, you get the team together and you assume it's a year from now and the project has failed spectacularly. Then you ask everyone to write down all the possible reasons why it failed.
Ah, I see. That forces people to proactively look for risks that their confirmation bias would normally filter out. You're making it safe to be critical.
You're engaging the slow, logical brain by asking it to creatively solve the problem of failure, rather than just look for data that supports success.
What's fascinating here, though, is what the research says about intelligence.
That it offers no immunity.
In fact, smart people can be better at rationalizing their biased decisions.
They have more cognitive firepower to build these complex, logical-sounding defenses around a fundamentally flawed premise. It makes them even harder to convince.
So awareness is the only real defense.
You have to understand the mechanics of how your brain systematically lies to you, and then you can set up these mental traps and structural checks to force logical deliberation.
Okay, so we've prepared for career fluidity, we've refined our critical thinking. Now we need the tools to actually execute our goals.
Let's move to part 3. The art of a win-win, mastering negotiation and persuasion.
Negotiation really is the ultimate practical skill, isn't it? It's where your adaptability and your critical thinking actually hit the road.
And it starts with a mindset shift. You have to move away from confrontation and toward what's called integrative bargaining.
The old school view is definitely hostile, a zero-sum game, a battle.
Right. For me to win, you have to lose. If I get a bigger piece of the pie, your piece has to be smaller.
That view is just so short-sighted, it leads to fragile agreements and often ruins relationships.
The modern approach, the win-win, is all about collaborative problem solving. The goal isn't to just divide the existing pie. It's to find ways to make the pie bigger.
To discover hidden value and find mutual gains that satisfy what both parties really need.
It sounds great in theory, but how do you find that hidden value? If I'm negotiating my salary, the money is a fixed number, right?
That's where the integrative approach comes in. If the salary itself is the sticking point, your position, you have to start asking questions to uncover their underlying interests.
Okay, so maybe the company has a rigid salary band, but they have a lot of flexibility on other things.
Exactly. Maybe they can offer more vacation time or more remote work days or a huge professional development budget. These are things that are low cost for them, but might be incredibly high value for you. So it's about expanding the definition of value beyond just cash.
And that requires curiosity. You have to do your prep, but you also have to be ready to ask diagnostic questions to really understand their constraints and their needs.
And speaking of preparation, the foundation of any negotiation is knowing your leverage. And the key concept here is your BT&A.
Best. Alternative. To A, negotiated. Agreement.
Your walk-away option. Your plan B.
It is the single most important piece of information you can have. If this negotiation fails completely, what is the next best thing you can do for yourself?
Do you have another job offer? Can you get the product from another supplier? Can you afford to just wait?
Knowing your BETNA, a strong BETNA, it changes your entire emotional state, gives you immense confidence. You start negotiating from a position of choice, not a position of need.
And that eliminates the desperation that leads you to make bad concessions.
If your BETNA is weak, or you don't even have one, you'll be tempted to take any deal, no matter how bad, just to avoid walking away with nothing. That's why you have to rigorously strengthen your BATNA before you ever get to the table.
Beyond leverage, there's the human element. The sources really stress this idea of separating the people from the problem.
This is so critical, because when negotiations get tough, it's so easy for emotions or bruised egos to take over and lead to an impasse.
You stop debating the issue, and you start debating the other person's intelligence or their motives.
Yes. The goal is to maintain professional respect and rapport, even when you fundamentally disagree on the issues. The problem is the problem, not the person.
And the sources have some really actionable advice on how to do this with language, right? Reframing.
It's all about reframing. When you feel that urge to use accusatory language, you have to shift immediately to inquiry. So instead of saying something like, "Your demand is completely unreasonable," which just invites a defensive reaction.
You phrase it as a collaborative problem.
Precisely. You sheep to something like, "I'm having difficulty seeing how we can meet that requirement given our current constraints. Can you help me understand your thinking on it?"
It depersonalizes the conflict. It turns it from a fight into a puzzle you have to solve together. It focuses on the why.
And that keeps the conversation moving forward instead of getting stuck in emotional warfare.
Okay, let's get into specific tactics. Persuasive techniques that can really shift the balance. Let's start with anchoring.
Anchoring is one of the most reliable psychological biases we have. We tend to over-rely on the very first piece of information we hear, the anchor, when we make decisions.
So that first number on the table sets the psychological boundaries for the entire conversation.
Yes. Whoever makes the first credible offer powerfully influences the rest of the discussion. If you've done your research, you generally want to be the one to set that anchor.
And you set it aggressively, right? Higher or lower than your actual target.
Yes, to pull the other party closer to your desired outcome, even if they never accept the anchor itself.
Okay, but let's play defense. What if the other side throws out a crazy anchor? A ridiculously low salary offer designed to shock you and throw you off your game.
First, you don't flinch. The key is to acknowledge their anchor, but then immediately and strongly re-anchor the discussion. You can't let their arbitrary number control the field.
So you pivot, and you bring your own counteroffer with data to back it up.
Exactly. You say something like, I hear your proposal, but based on the industry data for this role, which is in the range of X, my proposal of Y is grounded in the established market rate.
You're fighting their arbitrary anchor with your fact-based anchor.
You're providing a compelling reason why your number is the realistic starting point for the conversation.
And the final essential technique, mastering strategic concessions. The sources are crystal clear on this. Never give anything away for free.
That is an ironclad rule. Concessions are your currency. They have to be strategic and they have to be reciprocal. The rule is quid pro quo. Something for something.
You maintain the balance of power by asking for something in return every time you move closer to their position.
Exactly. And you should verbalize the difficulty of the concession you're making to increase its perceived value.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say the other side asks for a shorter timeline. You respond, I understand why that's important for you, and while that significantly stretches our capacity, we're willing to make it work. In return, though, we'll need you to approve the final budget by end of day tomorrow.
I see. You're showing that your concession has value, and you're extracting immediate reciprocal value in exchange. It confirms this is a structured conversation, not a series of giveaways.
It professionalizes the entire exchange. The successful professional today is someone who can identify constraints, find creative solutions, and execute the deal with confidence, all backed up by a strong BATNA.
So what does this all mean? We've covered these three huge pillars for success in the 21st century. We started with the Great Reshuffle, recognizing the need for constant, proactive adaptation.
Then we turned inward. We talked about the absolute necessity of debiasing our minds, understanding our cognitive flaws, sunk cost, confirmation bias, to make sure we're making rational choices.
And finally, we detailed the power of collaborative negotiation, using tools like BATNA, reframing, and strategic anchoring to get things done in a win-win way. It seems like the ability to learn quickly, assess information critically, and then communicate effectively is the superpower that connects all three.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, given the rise of AI and the pressure to reskill, I want to leave you with a final thought. Consider where you might be applying the sunk cost fallacy right now in your own career.
That's a powerful thought to end on. Are you holding on to an obsolete skill or a certification or even an entire career path just because of the time and money you've already sunk into it?
Exactly. Are you refusing to pivot to something with more future value because that would mean admitting the last 5 or 10 years of investment were, in a sense, a loss? Reflecting on that and forcing yourself to answer that reframing question, if I were starting fresh today, would I still make this investment? That might just change how you approach your next critical career decision.
A truly critical thought to leave with. Thank you for diving deep with us.
We'll see you next time.